Welcome and hello, poets and writers and literary aficionados. Hi, Joyce.
Hi.
Hi, Joyce.
Hi. Hello,
Hi,
everyone.
Danny. Hi, Peter. I'm just letting all the names and faces come into the room. Hello, Kevin.
Uh-oh.
Hello, Alice. Hello, Hilda. Hello, Janae. People from all over California are with us. This is wonderful, especially since we have our Poet Laureate joining us today. So I'll just get started by introducing myself and my colleague. I'm Jamie Asaye FitzGerald, and I am the Director of Poets and Writers California office and our Readings and Workshops West mini grant program. And I'm here today with my colleague, Jalen. You want to say hi, Jalen?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jalen. I'm the Programs and Partnerships Assistant, and I work in the East, our Readings and Workshops East Division in New York.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jalen. And Jalen's going to be helping co-host the event with us today. I would like to pay acknowledgement to the lands that we operate on, which are the traditional lands of the Tongva, Tataviam, and Chumash people, and the Rockaway, Lenape, and Canarsie people. These are the original stewards of the land that we call Los Angeles and New York City. And I'd also like to thank the California Arts Council for its support of all of our community building events and our mini grants program here in California. So as some of you already know well, we've been convening community members like this for many, many years. We've been doing town halls and check-ins, roundtable meetings and retreats. And this is part of the way that we help strengthen literary communities throughout the state and connect everyone together. We'd like to talk more about our mini grants program near the end of this event. So stay tuned for that. But in the meantime, I am going to just kind of do a rundown of the agenda for today, which hopefully Jalen will be able to paste into the chat box. And you are more than welcome to also use the chat to ask questions, to share events, resources, and the like, and to show your appreciation. So please feel free to do that. So what we'll do is I'll introduce Lee in just a minute, and Lee's going to speak for about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll open things up for questions. You can use, for question time, you can use the raise hand function, which is down in your reactions panel or tool. Some of you might see a little ellipses symbol at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and it would be under there under reactions, and you'll see a little raise hand function. You can also put your questions in the chat directly if you can't figure out how to raise your hands on the Zoom. We kindly ask that everyone remain muted. Make sure that you are muted during the period when Lee is speaking or anyone else is speaking, and only unmute when you are asking a question or making a comment. I think that's about it for our Zoom etiquette. So I'm just going to plunge right in to introduce our special guest, Lee Herrick, who is the California Poet Laureate. It's thrilling I was thrilled when I saw that Lee was made the Poet Laureate, because I've seen how active he has been as a teacher and as a poet and just like generally inspiring person, doing so much in the Central Valley and specifically in Fresno. So when I saw his name, I kind of jumped for joy. And I'll just share a little bit about Lee. He's the author of 3 books of poems. I hope you'll check them out: Scar and Flower, Gardening Secrets of the Dead, and This Many Miles from Desire. He has also edited The World I Leave You, Asian American Poets on Faith and Spirit. His poetry appears widely. Just a few of the places where you can read his work are the Poetry Foundation, the Academy of American Poets, The Place That Inhabits Us, poems from the San Francisco Bay watershed, and Indivisible Poems of Social Justice. And there's a note here that that collection has a foreword by, oh no, here are Poems for the Planet. That one has the foreword by the Dalai Lama, which is a great honor. Lee also serves on the advisory board of terrain.org and 16 Rivers Press, and co-founded Lit Hop in Fresno. And if anyone has been to Lit Hop, you know what a wonderful event that is. Lee was born in, and forgive my pronunciation, I don't know if I'm going to say it right, Daejeon, Korea. I watch a lot of K-dramas, but I don't quite have the pronunciation down. And he was adopted as an infant. He lives with his family in Fresno, as I mentioned, and served as Fresno Poet Laureate from 2015 to 2017, teaches at Fresno City College and in the low-res MFA program at University of Nevada, Reno at Lake Tahoe. He is the 10th California Poet Laureate and the first Asian American to serve in the role. So Lee will speak about his path as a writer and perhaps share a poem with us. Welcome, Lee Herrick.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you very much. Let's see. So I'm really happy to be here for a lot of reasons. One, my love for poets and writers. So thanks, Jamie and Jalen, for having me and everything that you do. But also, it's nice just to be with all of you. I know that I recognize some of you, and I look forward to meeting everyone here today. Yeah, so my path as a writer, I've started to say recently that I feel like my path as a writer started in Korea before I was even with language. You know, I think our paths, without getting into, you know, predestination and fate and things like that, I do think that our earliest memories and the sounds we experience inform our lives somehow. And in my case, as an adoptee, you know, I was adopted when I was about 10 months old, and I've never met my birth mother or birth father or first mother or first father. But so I was raised in the East Bay and then later Modesto, but I'm using this term now, having this inverted grief thrust upon me, which is how I see adoption sometimes, this immediate loss from the outset, right? And so poetry has been a way for me to, I don't want to be melodramatic and say survive that inverted grief, but the arts in general, I think, can do that for us. So, you know, once I was in California, I was basically raised in the East Bay. My family still, well, they live in Modesto now, but we're close. My mom is 81, my dad is 83. And I bring this up only because I was really surrounded by language as a kid. My mom played a lot of Scrabble and was always doing crossword puzzles. And My dad, even though he was a finance person, was a huge reader. I remember him reading probably 2 to 3 books a week, and then he would go donate them back to the public library. My mom was an artist, and so my sister and I were always around discussions like that, books, the arts, and things like that. I went to public schools. I went to high school in Modesto, and I think a lot of our paths as writers probably start with teachers. At least that's the case with me. There was one in particular in high school who was very formative for me, named Nancy Barr, passed away a few years ago, but she was a great teacher. And then I attended Modesto JC, where I had some more great professors. And that's about when I started learning about poetry a little bit. I remember at Modesto JC, I was living in Modesto, but it's only about an hour and 15 minutes from the Bay Area, San Francisco. So I would drive probably once every 2 to 3 months. I would drive to City Lights Books and just spend hours upstairs in the poetry room. I learned about Poetry Flash, and I would try to hunt down the new, the hard copy issues of Poetry Flash. And so Modesto JC, that time was formative for me. I went to Stanislaus State in Turlock and got a degree in English. And they don't have an MFA program. And at that time, honestly, I was very interested in classical rhetoric and rhetorical studies, and I still am. So my master's degree is in composition and rhetoric, and my thesis was on Aristotelian theory, specifically Aristotle's book called The Art of Rhetoric. And I sort of studied that alongside John F. Kennedy's crisis speeches. I'm very interested in political rhetoric, and I do think that makes its way into my poems sometimes. Yeah, so I finished my master's degree at Stanislaus State, and by then I was really trying to write. A good friend of mine was with June Jordan in Poetry for the People, and when I moved to, right before I moved to Fresno, I met a writer in Modesto, where I was teaching part-time. His name is Daniel Chacon, a great short story writer and novelist. And he said, oh, well, if you're moving to Fresno, I really hope you can meet my closest friend, Dan, and this person were best friends. And that was Andres Montoya, the late poet. And so when I moved to Fresno in 1997, Andres was the first poet I met, and he was extremely important in my life and also as a poet. Fresno opened up a whole world. I can't even say where, I don't know where I would be as a poet if I weren't from Fresno. I'm sure I would still be writing, but Fresno has really impacted me in many ways. I think I might have seen our current amazing Poet Laureate, Joseph Rios. He's here in Fresno, and I won't, list everybody. I'm sure many of you know the legions of poets from this Fresno area, but that's been a gift. I think my poetry path is, I don't know if it's unconventional or not. In one breath, I want to say, well, I don't have an MFA. I teach in an MFA program, and also at Fresno City College, but I don't have an MFA. So I always kind of felt like an outsider because of that, but I like it there. I've never been too concerned with the mainstream, ever. I feel more comfortable. And I think that's because I was raised in a family of white people. As an Asian person, it's always been my way of seeing the world, is sort of from a different lens. And so because of that informed my poetics, I think, and my idea that you can kind of just create things. I listened to a lot of rap and punk growing up. And I say this because that informed my poetics also, just this DIY, you can create it. So I started a little literary magazine called In the Grove that I edited for about 12 years. And, I started Lit Hop because I'd been to Lit Crawl, I'd been to these festivals, and Fresno just didn't have that. Fresno is a great poetry community, but I've always thought it's very institutional. Fresno State's MFA program is great, and there's these different sort of institutions, but it doesn't have a lot of third space poetry spaces like the Bay Area does or LA might. And so, and that's not to say it's better or worse, but Lit Hop was something I always just wanted to see. And I've always just been of the mind that if no one else is doing it, and I've thought about it and talked about it long enough, how can I possibly make this happen? So Lisa, my wife, and I started it along with some good writer friends here in 2016. We started Lit Hop, and our this year's Lit Hop will be in October, on October 14th. Yeah, and then I had published some books. The only real formal poetry study I did was at the University of Iowa for a short time, and mainly I was with the poet Tim Liu, who's back in New York, great Asian American poet. But a lot of my study of poetry has been just reading voraciously and talking with poets as much as I can. I think there's great, there are worlds and strangeness and histories and futures and possibilities that can open up with meaningful conversations with intelligent, passionate and compassionate people. I mean, in essence, a formalized version of that is what a degree is. And even though my friends weren't grading me and I wasn't submitting work to them, I just soaked up as much as I could. I've always gone to as many readings as I possibly could. And I still do, or I try to. And so in 2015, I was appointed Fresno Poet Laureate. Actually declined a nomination the first year. I just didn't think I was ready for it. And then in 2015, I accepted it, and it was a great honor being Fresno Poet Laureate. I saw some city laureates on the call, and forgive me if I missed somebody, but I saw Peter Harris, who I want to say Altadena, Kimmy I see there, who if I remember right, is Alameda. I saw Suzanne Bruce, who I just saw recently. She's a wonderful poet laureate in Fairfield. And so being the Fresno Poet Laureate really was wonderful. And then just to really zoom it forward quickly, and then I can stop and maybe hopefully there might be some questions or comments anyway. When I was appointed California Poet Laureate, it was just an incredible thrill and also a surprise. I was nominated, and it was early May. It was early 2022. I was nominated, and then it was probably a 7 or 8 month waiting period. And I know how many incredible poets there are in the state. I know how much good work you all and so many people are doing. So I really didn't think that that I would get that kind of a call, but I did, and I was informed I was being advanced as a finalist. There were quite a few written things I had to submit, a lot of background checks, and then I interviewed with about 6 or 7 people from the governor's office, and it's been a pure joy ever since. I say that everywhere I seem to be going. It's just been a pure joy. I was telling Jamie before we got on the call, sometimes I forget, or maybe I didn't realize how big California really is. I mean, in theory, I knew it, but California is almost about 40 million people. It's around 10 million more than the next most populous state, Texas. And everywhere I've gone, the poetry and just the unique flavor of each community, whether it's a library or a school, a prison, an art center, it's just been a joy. And I'm resting hard in between events, you know, but I'm here for all of it. It's just been a joy, and it's an honor to just, and I'm not saying that to placate. It is truly an honor to go around and be able to meet so many poets and talk about poetry. So that's sort of a, I don't know if that was quick or not, but about a 15-minute overview of my path as a writer. So if there are any comments or questions or complaints, fire away.
Thank you so much, Lee. It's always interesting to hear each writer's path, because they're all so different and unique in their own ways. So yeah, everybody, this is the time to fire away with your hand raising. And I will keep a lookout. I see that there is at the top of my screen
Oh, there's
a hand raise from
Jane.
Jane Mushinitz.
Hi everybody. Hi Lee, it's good to see you again.
Hi, Jane.
I wanted to ask, you were here with Lisa for the Cowett ceremony, and you kind of sneak previewed for us that you were planning to put together a California anthology. And I wanted to ask, what's the status of that dream project and what you have working on?
Yeah, so, well, it's great to see you, Jane. For those of you who don't know, Jane's a wonderful poet and really active in San Diego. And I was down there for the Steve Coet Awards. So the project that I'm undertaking in my term is called Our California. And in a nutshell, it's basically inviting any person in California, any age, any level of poetry writing experience, documented or undocumented, in prison or not, any Californian to write a poem about their town or their city or their California, if you will. What they might love about it, what's unique about it, or what they don't love about it and what they would change about it. And it's sort of my thinking is that it hopefully will give people an opportunity to bridge poetry and civic engagement, or to realize that poetry can have an ability to impact their surroundings. There have been some delays with that. Early on, I might have said, oh, we hope to have it up in June or July. There have been some delays, but now we're hoping, and I've been told by the California Arts Council that we're going to be doing sort of a rollout announcement for it very soon, October 1st. And then hopefully, I'm hoping for just a month after that, we'll be able to start accepting poems. All of the poems will be posted on the California Arts Council website. And out of that, the hope is to produce an anthology. I don't know if we'll be able to do that, but that's the hope.
Okay, thank you for sharing. That sounds like a fantastic project. I hope it rolls out soon. Jalen, can we get a question from the chat?
Sure. Let's see. Our first question from the chat is from Tracy. Tracy wants to know, what does resting hard look like for you these days?
What does what? I'm sorry, Jalen.
No problem. Resting hard.
Oh. So hi, Tracy. I don't know if we've met, but I know we're going to be meeting soon at Amy Uematsu's service. Resting hard. I've always been, I mean, I don't know, you all are busy people, you know, and you all have lives and concerns and challenges and stresses and things like that. And whether you're a laureate or not, I think, you know, each of us is giving of our time. For me, that has been stretched in this term. The best way I can describe it is that in April, which of course is a busier month for us, but in April of this year, I had 27 events, and it was pretty taxing. But I also think I like to think I have a pretty high motor. I want to think I have a good engine, that I can handle work, whether it's an intellectual kind of work or just physical labor. But I've realized also that I'm rethinking rest also. I like it when people say, I hope you're taking care, or, you know, we wish you well. There are different versions of that, you know, and then somebody might say, you know, are you resting? And then somebody might just more directly, and I won't comment on what I think when people tell me this, but sometimes they just say, you know, you can say no. And I'm aware of that, you know, I'm aware, you know, when somebody just tells you and you're like, I don't know that I asked. But of course I'm saying no to some things, you know, I just have to, but resting hard to answer the question. It used to take me a while, you know, half a day to unwind from an event, but now I can unwind and downshift instantly. You know, when the event is over, I know that that's time to take care of myself for the next one. So, you know, I might watch a movie at home or listen to music. I like to go for walks. I like to feed the birds and just sort of watch them for 10 minutes, which can really be a valuable 10 minutes. I think sometimes when I hear a person say, I'm too busy to rest, I think that's the very time they need to rest. And I'm mindful of that all the time. So I try to keep all of that in mind as I'm traveling, but it's also joyful, and I think of it as service. So it all kind of balances itself out, I hope. It's a good question. I hope I answered that.
I think you
Thanks,
did
Lee.
answer it. Thank you. We'll take a hand raise from Julaine Lee.
Hi, Lee.
Hi,
I just want to
Julaine.
say the way you answered your question about the question about like, where did your writing journey begin? Like, as a fellow adopted Korean, to think about it starting in Korea, like I've never thought about that before. So I'm definitely gonna be like investigating that. So, but I think my question is around grief and, you know, losing Amy this year, and then also Joe Limer from San Diego recently. It just feels like such a heavy loss as a poet. So I guess I'm just curious if you or even people want to put in the chat, like, how do you process this grief? Because it's just really, I don't know, it's like very heavy and feels like, I don't know, it's a huge, huge loss, I think, to the poetry community. So just curious how you're processing, or anybody else too.
Yeah. Well, first of all, hi, Julaine. It's nice to see you. And if everyone else will bear with me as I'm saying these things, I know that some of you might already know each other, but if you reach out later or meet each other at some point, Julaine's a wonderful friend and poet. I think it's a memoir in verse, I want to say, called Not My White Savior. But Julaine, it's great to see you, fellow adoptee. I think with the grief I was talking about before, let me just try to explain that a little bit more thoroughly, and then I'll get to the second part of your question. So I was in the bookstore once a couple of years ago, and I read that there was a writer who wrote a little short memoir of sorts about the death of her father. And I think she was in her 50s or so. And it was really an inexplicable grief that she was navigating. And she was talking about the loss of her father with whom she was so close over her life. And it's really just a difficult grief. And that's when it struck me that the adoptee, and I'm not into grief or trauma Olympics, so I'm not saying better or worse, but uniquely and differently, our grief or my grief, I'm calling it this inverted grief, thrust upon the adoptee from infancy. So that our loss, for those of us who haven't reunited, will never be able to meet them, and we've never known them, we just grow up with it. For me, that manifested itself when I was young, especially into high school, in a lot of anger, a lot of confusion, a lot of doubt. Thank goodness for soccer and music and writing, these outlets. And, you know, I think, Julaine, and of course, I'm not an expert on grief. What I do know, of course, is that it never really goes away, and that it just, you know, that cliche of it going in waves, I think, is really an apt metaphor. How do I navigate it? I do think memory has value, not just for the sentimental purposes, but also in the potential for those memories to infuse us with joy amidst the grief. So I remember Amy in those ways, you know, that helps me personally. You know, quite frankly, I'm grateful to be alive, and I don't mean that to be I don't know how that sounds, but I'm truly grateful to be alive. There were challenging parts of my life, and so with grief, I think there's value for me remembering where I've been and what I've made it through. With other people, I really try to remember the joys of knowing them, you know. Amy was a big, beautiful spirit. And I'm sorry I didn't know the other person, but any person we lose like that, I think they continue to inspire us. And by that, I mean, just literally inspire means to have life breathed into you. So I almost breathe differently when I think about those people, you know, and the poetry, needless to say, is an outlet for that when we're writing it. And it's inspiring for us when we read it. So, yeah, I hope I spoke to your question, Julaine, but yeah.
Thank you, Lee. Jalen, can we go to the chat again? We're just gonna bounce back and forth.
Okay. Let's see. We have a question from Carrie, asking or saying, I would be interested to know how you started a poetry review.
A poetry review, a poetry journal. So when I started it, it was 1995 or 96. And that was back with submissions through the mail and things like that. So of course now people are using things like Submittable more commonly, but aside from those technical changes, it's a good question. You know, first I started to think what I wanted the journal to be. I think that's a good place to start. Do you want it to be just poetry, or do you want to do multiple genres? I also thought, you know, I remember thinking, would it be regional? Would it be just California writers? So for example, Zizova publishes only from the 5 Western states? If you're at a college or university, would it be for that community? So I think that's one thing to decide, who you want to publish and who do you want to serve. Will it be in print? Will it be online? When we were doing it, it was mostly, ours was just print. This was pretty much before the real proliferation of online literary magazines. But now, of course, there are things like newpages.com where you can find a huge index of online and in print magazines. In the Grove, I started in Turlock because I just realized there weren't very many opportunities for Central Valley writers, especially people who were first timers in print. So, you know, of course, the Atlantic or Poetry or, you know, whatever it was, Plowshares. But I realized there weren't many local opportunities for people who were just starting out, kind of like I was. And so in the Grove was that. It was California writers in all genres. And we published some very accomplished, rather major writers alongside first timers whose work we loved, but, you know, they were a mother of 3 or a father of 2 and didn't have a book yet or really any publications to speak of. So that's always been my interest, is as wide a net and as much democracy as possible infused in a system that's going to have some hierarchies and things anyway. So that's really what I would say is thinking about those things. And then, you know, I have some friends who were the genre editors, and we did it really on the DIY scale. I mean, it was very basic. I gotta tell you, it was very basic, but that's all right. And I'll say one other thing that I'm remembering now is really surprising. Once you do it, or once you establish a literary magazine, people will start sending you work. I remember going to the PO box, kind of surprised, thinking, wow, people are sending us their poems. So yeah, I did that for about 12 years. Our last issue was in 2008, and it was guest edited by Daniel Chacon, and it was an entire issue devoted to Andres Montoya. And we're very proud of that. It's out of print, like most of our issues. This was a long time ago, and our press run was pretty small. But you can find that last 2008 issue on the website of his brother, Andres's brother, the writer and artist Maceo Montoya. But anyway, that's a bit about how I started in the Grove. It was a great experience.
Great. Okay, up next, we have our last hand raise from Suzanne Bruce.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie and Jalen, for hosting this tonight, and Lee for your time. Really appreciate it. Lee, you talked about that reading as much as you could and going to and attending readings influenced your writing. And I'm sure your many travels were inspiration as well. But I'm wondering is, how do you work through the inspiration and the poetic craft? In other words, when you decide to do a poem, when do you decide it needs a form or when it needs to stay as free verse?
It's a good question. It's nice to see you, Suzanne.
Good to see you.
That's a good question. I think for me, I will alternate entering a poem thinking form first or form later based on a project or some thinking that I'm currently undergoing. So for example, right now I'm specifically trying to write in some form, and sonnets and villanelles are probably the forms that seem to give shape to my thinking most readily. And I love the forms, specifically the Petrarchan sonnet. So in this instance, I'm thinking a lot about form. And I think that might be because my last book, Scar and Flower, it has a couple of poems that are form poems, but mostly those were driven by visceral, emotional, very heavy reactions to American gun violence. And so it was such a difficult book to write for the emotional reasons that in the next book, I don't know if I want to do something different or I need to do something different. But I think that's often how I see the progression of books unfold. I certainly see that progression of albums unfold. So for example, let's just take the Beastie Boys, a group that I like, Paul's Boutique is sort of a funky rap record. And then they have one that's got instruments on it. And then their next album is a little bit different. And so form functions like that, usually from period of writing to period of writing. Now, within a poem, it's also just a great editing tool or revision tool among many that you might know, is just if a poem needs something or if a poem isn't working, and you've done different things with it, one of the many options that might infuse life into a draft that's stagnating will be to try different forms with it. So those are some things I think of as I'm writing and with form. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. No, that helps a lot. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks, Suzanne. It's good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thanks, Lee. So many great questions and great answers.
Yeah.
Our next one from the chat is from Grace. Question, Lee, how does faith and spirituality inform your life and work?
Hi, Grace. Thank you. So faith and spirituality, I wasn't raised in a church or with any kind of knowledge or language to speak of about religion. Neither of my parents are very religious. My mom took my sister and me to Sunday school, I remember, at a church a few times. But I also remember her saying that they wanted us to explore on our own. My mom's an artist, and she was very much of the mind that people need to explore. So maybe that explains some of this. But my dad also was that way because, he grew up in boarding schools without a lot of options. He was just sent off to boarding schools. That side of the family did a lot of that. So when it came to religion, I didn't really grow up with it. Without going too far into the specifics, there have been times in my life, we'll just call them some very rough patches, where I needed and found what was probably always there, which was God or some kind of larger faith that I think was very helpful for me. That's just what I believe. I don't have a lot of the formal knowledge of it, but I believe deeply in those kinds of larger ideas. So that's one way I can answer it. Another way to answer it is that in 2020, an anthology that I co-edited was published called The World I Leave You, and it's Asian American poets on faith and spirit. And we're really proud of the book. It was published right at the start of the pandemic, so that was kind of hard. But it's an incredible anthology. Lee Young Lee's poem is the one we borrowed the title from. The World I Leave You is a line from one of his poems. And there are some really well-known poets in that anthology, alongside some that we were very pleased to learn about. So that's another way. And the last way I'll say it, Grace, and I this is sort of a direct, brief way of saying it. How does it inform my life and work? Is that, again, I'm glad to be alive. And I want as much joy as I can out of this life. And I think faith has helped me get through some things. And I respect other people's faiths also deeply. I respect other people's faiths immensely, and other people's disinterest or a different form of faith. I don't begrudge. It seems to me, at least the media is telling us that we're living in the most divisive time ever. I don't know if that's the case or not. But what I do know is that I'm not interested in judging other people's faiths. Just one quick little anecdote to that point was I'm teaching my daughter how to drive right now, and we were driving really slowly in this parking lot in Fresno just yesterday, and there was a guy who got out of his car with a carpet and was praying right there in the parking lot, presumably Muslim. I have respect for that.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing those things. I think we have time for one more question for Lee. I'm sorry that we can't get to everybody's questions, but I think we've gotten to some really good ones. So I'm just going to call on our last question offerer, and that would be James Coates.
Hey Lee, great to see you. Thank you for being here. So I work with a lot of youth writers with Cal Poets in the Schools and other programs as well. What advice would you give to a teen or young writer that is interested in a poetry or writing career?
Good question. It's nice to see you, James. Did I meet you recently?
Cal Poets, yeah, the symposium.
Oh yes,
Over
good to
summer.
see you. Good to see you. So advice for a young poet wanting to be a writer? Is that was?
Yeah, just a young teen maybe that's interested in a writing career.
Yeah. So, James, before I speak to your question, I just want to say, Allegra, thank you. I think I'll be seeing you soon, and Andy also. And Michael Clam, I know you had your hand up, but it's thank you for being here. It's good to be here with you. Whether a person was going to be a writer or not, I'm just old school enough, James, and maybe it's because I'm a professor also, but I really think there's great value in a college degree. And you might already have one, or you might already know that, but of course you don't need one. You know, there's a long list of people who have written and had wonderful careers that don't have a college degree, but there's so much to learn in college. So depending how young one is, at any age, a person can go to college. So there's that, you know, there are faculty and teachers who can be very supportive, and very helpful also. So there's that. I think knowing the field a bit, you know, Poets and Writers is an indispensable, vital resource. I bought that magazine every other month when it came out. I'd wait for it at Barnes and Noble, you know. Back then it was like $1.95, $2.95 an issue or something. I don't know. But you know, I think just knowing what's going on in the field, I think, can be very helpful for a poet. Who's writing what, going to readings, and reading as much as you can, you know. Sometimes I think, you know, I meet poets who say, oh, I don't want to read because it will impact my voice. I mean, and I say this with respect, but that just runs antithetical to development in any way. You know, musicians know who the other bands, athletes go watch other sports and other games. So writers need to experience and read as much as they can. A lot of faith, James, a lot of belief in yourself, whatever that core fire is that drives you, don't ever let that go out. Don't ever lose sight of that. There'll be a lot of noise. There will be a lot of no's. For every one time I've had something that went well, there are probably 10 to 20 that were setbacks. So if you have a sense of your compass and why you're writing, I think you're more likely to withstand the inevitable setbacks, right? Or it could be something else. Maybe you'll realize, oh, wait, it's filmmaking. But if it's poetry and if it's writing, I think maintaining a sense of who you are as you grow would be good. And then, they talk about literary citizenship, not for the sake of it. I think sometimes it's just performative. Oh, I have to go here because I want someone to do something for me. Do you know what I mean? I've never felt like that. I've never gone to something because I wanted something in return for me personally. I've gone just because it's interesting and I want to go hear them. And I think also knowing it's a long game, keep the joy, keep the fire, but it's a long game. And I wish you all the best, but in a nutshell, those are some things I hope would be helpful.
Thank you.
And sorry, Jamie, just real quickly, I would say also, James, seeing you here, seeing you at the Cal Poets thing, and also hearing you read that poem, I think you're on your way if you're not already pretty much there. So keep at it.
Thank you. And thank you all for your really great questions. And thank you, Lee, for being so present with us today. It's wonderful to hear you speak, and for your generosity. We all really, really appreciate it. And yeah, so thank you very, very much. I want to take this time now to share a little bit about our Readings and Workshops mini grants program, and then open it up to the folks who are here. If anyone has an event that they would like to share that's upcoming, or a call for submissions, or an invitation to participate in a literary event that you're planning. This is a nice moment to just kind of give your events and resources a shout out to the group. You can also share them in the chat. Again, I'll just ask you to hand raise because we are kind of a large group. So get those hands up, and we'll try to be lean and mean so that we can sort of get through and share as much as we can with as many people as we can. And I will just give a shout out to our Readings and Workshops mini grant program. If you don't yet know about it, you will receive info after this event. I will be sharing the roster of attendees, as well as links to poets and writers resources, including the mini grants, which help support writers who give readings or teach creative writing workshops in the community. We've supported many writers throughout the state of California. We support in-person events, virtual events, hybrid events. If you're doing a literary event, you can apply to help pay the writers that you are featuring. So I will leave it at that and be sharing more info later. And for now, let's just do some brief announcements and sharing about what's happening throughout our amazing literary state of California. And I will call on Suzanne.
Oh, thank you. Just briefly, I wanted to say, as Poet Laureate, one of the programs that I have started is collaboration with our land trust. And so we're on our third, what I call hike and writes. And people sign up, and I develop a poetry kind of a little handout, and the Land Trust provides a docent. We read some poetry, we hike, the docents talk about the land, the history of the land, what plants, trees, flowers, birds, animals are there. And then we stop and we have writing time, and then we continue on. And we do that for a couple of hours. And then at the end, we can share writing then. Or if you want to polish your writing, you can send it to me within 2 weeks. And I put all the poems from the hike and writes into a zip file and share with all the participants. Our next one is going to be on Sunday, October 22nd, from 1 to 4 p.m. at Rush Ranch in Suisun City, California. And I will put in the chat. You can contact me at fairfieldpoetlaureate@gmail.com.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, up next we have Carrie Nolan, and on deck, Alice Rogoff.
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. First of all, this is really wonderful. This is my first time ever coming to one of these events, and it's really inspiring. Thank you so much for organizing this. I just wanted to announce for a friend of mine, Catherine G. She's a Korean American writer who just opened an art space called Liminal Art Space in Orange County, California. And she's trying to organize what she calls the Raw Writers Workshop. And we're looking for participants. It's a really no stress situation where people are getting together who may or may not have training in writing and want to share their writing and get feedback in a small arena that's non-threatening. Anyway, I just wanted to tell you about that. I put my email address in the chat in case any of you want to find out more about it. Again, it's the Liminal Space in Orange. It's actually a dance studio with a paint, like an artist studio also, and they have acting classes, and now they're trying to start up a writing component. So thank you for this opportunity to share that information. And thank you so much to Lee Herrick for a really lovely presentation. I learned a lot. Thank you.
Thanks for sharing, Carrie. Okay, up next we've got Alice Rogoff, and on deck, Andy Jones.
Hello, that was a wonderful presentation, Lee. Thank you so much. And I'm one of the editors of the Haight-Ashbury Literary Journal, and we just came out with a new issue. It's dedicated to Indigo Joanne Hotchkiss, who was a founding editor. And we're going to have a reading at Bird and Beckett Bookstore on October 26th at 7 p.m. with local contributors from San Francisco and the Bay Area. And some of the readers will be Cesar Love and Nellie Wong and Kitty Costello and Rafael Pineda.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alice. Always at all of our Poets and Writers community events. Yay. Okay, who do we have next? Andy Jones, and then Kim Sujioka on deck.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to be recognized and to plug our local events. I so enjoyed the presentation by Lee Herrick. I run the Poetry Night reading series at the largest art gallery in Yolo County here in Davis, California. And we have readings every first and third Thursday. So for instance, tonight we have Oakland poet Richard Loringer reading with a jazz band. And then in October, we've got Bill O'Daly on the first Thursday of the month. We have D.R. Wagner on the third Thursday of the month. And then on November 2nd, we have Lee Herrick coming to Davis, and we're very excited about that. So I invite everyone, if you're curious, to check us out at poetryindavis.com or just to Google Poetry in Davis. Our events are every first and third Thursday nights at 7, and we have an open mic at 8. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy. I'll definitely check out your website. Okay, up next we have Kim Sugioka, and on deck, I think we have no one on deck. So Kim, you're our last announcer.
Hi, so good to see you, Lee, and thank you so much for your words and insights. I just wanted to say that I'm starting our new series, or our second series of readings called The Last Supper Party, sponsored by the San Francisco International Art Festival, which will be starting on October 18th. We have 2 poets and a musician. So we're going to have Jenny Lim and MK Chavez, and there'll be a musician named Nathaniel Vincent, and they may actually work together, the poets and the musician. So every third Wednesday we'll have a different reading with 2 poets and a musician. It's got a really great lineup. And November 15th, it'll be Shizue Siegel and Tarita Mikkel, and so on. It takes place at Medicine for Nightmares in San Francisco, and which is on 24th Street in the Mission. But there's an open mic that follows. So I hope people can come and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimmy. Okay, actually, we do have Joyce Jenkins up next and Tracy Kato Kiriyama on deck.
Okay, just wanted to say hello. I'm Joyce from Poetry Flash, poetryflash.org. It's a literary review and calendar online. And if you have events, I'm making notes of all of these events that you're mentioning. And if you have events anywhere in California, please please consider emailing them to me, editor@poetryflash.org or info@poetryflash.org. Email me the info and I'll do my very best to get it in our calendar and feature it in our review online. And also, just really quickly, we are presenting the Northern California Book Awards at the San Francisco Main Public Library, Saturday, September 30th, 2 p.m., free. There's a reception after. We're going to be honoring Brenda Hillman with poet, activist, educator. With our Lifetime Achievement Award, we'll be giving awards in poetry, fiction, general nonfiction, translation. And then also the Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival will be in Berkeley Civic Center Park, October 14th. Sadly, the same day as Lit Hop, but I think that's what you said, Lee. Lee, that your talk was wonderful. And but anyway, it'll be very sweet and very fun. The Watershed Environmental Poetry Festival, October 14th, and that's just noon to 4:30 in the park with other events around it. So poetryflash.org. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joyce. Get those up. Get me the writer info for the applications for Watershed. It's still okay. Yeah.
Okay, good. I will. I will.
Okay. Okay. Up next, we have Tracy. Hi, Tracy.
Hey, Jamie. Lee, so good to meet you. Look forward to meeting you in person to celebrate Amy. But yeah, thank you, Jamie, for hosting this. Just want to let you know about Tuesday Night Project. I dropped in the chat the probably the most active social for us is Instagram. So you can check that out. We have 2 shows left for this year in Little Tokyo, downtown Los Angeles. So Tuesday Night Cafe is on the 1st and 3rd Tuesdays of every month, April through October. This year, we've only done once a month. So we're jumping up to try 1st and 3rd Tuesdays again. Some of our staff is a little nervous about it, but we invite you to come. It's free, of course. And we primarily focus on and feature Asian American and local LA artists, but we also have a 3-spot open mic in the middle that you can sign up for at 6:30, and or reach out to us if you would like to, possibly feature in 2024. It's multidisciplinary, so it does have many different disciplines that we feature. But of course, poetry is a through line for us. So please come and hang out.
Great. Thank you so much, Tracy. I have a few announcements too. Poets and Writers is now accepting applications, which are due October 2nd for our 2023 fiction cohort of Get the Word Out, a publicity incubator for debut authors. So if you are a fiction writer with a book coming out, I believe next year, you should check out this program. I will be sending this information out to you all post meeting. We are also signing folks up for November's Mapping the Maze. This is an online workshop designed for poets who have developed their craft and are now ready to make a concrete plan for getting their work published. So if you are sort of at that beginning point in your career as a published writer, published poet, this might be the workshop for you to check out. Again, that's called Mapping the Maze. And then last but not least, I will be convening teaching writers who work with underserved or historically marginalized groups as teachers of creative writing for a workshop leaders retreat in Los Angeles, in person, at the end of October, October 29th. This is a free half-day retreat designed to uplift and inspire teaching artists and honor them as writers. If you're interested in attending, please feel free to email me at jfitzgerald@pw.org, and I will share information with you about the retreat. With that, I just want to thank you all for joining us, for asking insightful questions, for doing your writing, putting on events, teaching youth, all the things that you all do every day. We really appreciate it. And many thanks to you, Lee, for joining us and for your wonderful words and your mindful and I just love hearing you talk. I could listen to you all day long. So with that, thanks everyone. I hope that you will give us some feedback. I'll be sending a roster, I'll be sending links, and I'll be sending a copy of the chat as well. So everything that was shared in the chat, you'll get by email. Okay, everyone. Happy Thursday. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. We'll see you at the next event. Thank you, Lee.